He unzipped his backpack. Even in the dim light of the storm shelter, I could see my mother's face change when she saw what was inside. Processed everything. The forbidden foods, candy bars, chips, crackers, canned ravioli. Where did you get this? Her voice was barely a whisper. How does your 12-year-old son, the one you raised on raw vegetables and kombucha, become the only person prepared to save your life? Before that moment, before the sky turned a sick, bruised yellow-green and the sirens began to wail, there was the doctrine. Our family lived by a set of rules so strict they felt biblical. We had the strictest diet of any family I knew. The central commandment: nothing with more than 5 ingredients. No exceptions. My mother enforced this with the zeal of a fanatic. I was 10, my brother was 12. One time, she caught my brother with a single ketchup packet he'd pocketed from the cafeteria. She reacted like it was fentanyl. Soon, the doctrine isolated us. We were banned from every school trip, every play date, every birthday party. My parents couldn't control what we ate there, so we simply weren't allowed to go. We became the weird kids. Every day at lunch was a fresh humiliation. We'd unpack our matching sterile containers of raw vegetables and bland homemade hummus, while everyone else tore into pizza and cookies. "Here come the rabbits," they'd laugh. I learned to eat fast, to look down, to just disappear. I'd already given up accepting this was my life until I was 18. But it destroyed my brother. I'd watch him just staring at his carrot sticks, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. He told me about his friends sharing bags of chips at recess, about them trading Halloween candy he never got to collect. He tried to fight back. He tried logic. He literally made a PowerPoint presentation about Olympic athletes who ate McDonald's and still won gold medals. He printed out the labels from her $20 health bars, showing they had more ingredients than a regular granola bar. "It's a different quality of ingredient," she'd counter, ending the discussion. He even begged. He broke down one night, pleading for just one normal snack a week if he ate healthy the other 6 days. Our father, her silent enforcer, shut him down. "That's how addiction starts," he said, his voice flat. "When you're 18, you can poison your body all you want." My brother looked crushed. 18 was a lifetime away. That's when he became an expert at fountain diving. It was a precise, practiced skill. He'd pretend to tie his shoe, his head down, but his eyes scanning constantly for adults. In seconds, his hand would dart into the water, grabbing handfuls of coins. He learned the routes. He knew which parks had the most wishes, which gas station clerks wouldn't ask questions about a 12-year-old boy buying beef jerky with a pocket full of wet quarters. He made me promise never to tell. In exchange, he'd share his stash. That was how our secret rebellion began. While our parents bragged to their friends about how healthy we were, about how we never even asked for junk food anymore, we would be sitting on the cold tile of the bathroom floor, the door locked, silently splitting a Snickers bar. We'd take tiny, tiny bites to make it last. It was more than chocolate and peanuts. It was Doritos that tasted like freedom. It was our secret, the only thing that was ours, and we never suspected our parents would be the ones to need it most. That Tuesday in May, the doctrine was in full effect. We were at the dinner table, pushing steamed broccoli and quinoa around our plates. It was silent, as always. Then Dad's phone buzzed. Not a text, but the shriek of an emergency alert. Tornado warning. Take shelter immediately. The sky outside had turned a sick yellow-green color, like a fresh bruise. Then the siren started wailing. That horrible rising and falling sound that makes your stomach drop into your shoes. Dad jumped up. Storm shelter, basement, now, chaos. Mom didn't grab photos. She didn't grab water. She ran to the fridge, her hands pulling out her glass containers of cut vegetables, her precious fermenting kombucha. "We might be down there for hours," she yelled over the rising wind. The thunder cracked so loud the whole house shook. The basement was dark, damp, and smelled like earth. We huddled in the concrete corner while the storm raged above us. It didn't sound like wind. It sounded like our house was being torn apart by giant hands. It sounded like a freight train was driving directly through our living room. Mom, trying to control the uncontrollable, tried to whisper. Good thing I grabbed our vegetables. We have plenty of fresh food. My brother caught my eye in the darkness. We both knew. Those vegetables wouldn't last 3 hours in this suffocating heat, let alone 3 days. Hours passed. The air grew thick and hot. Mom's fresh food was already failing. The vegetables were getting slimy. The yogurt she'd grabbed was now just warm, sour soup. My stomach was cramping, a hollow ache from hunger and fear. Mom was praying quietly. Dad held us tight, his own fear a tangible thing. I thought we were going to die. That's when my brother finally spoke. His voice cut through the darkness. Zip. He unzipped his school backpack. Even in the dim light, I could see my mother's face change. I saw her eyes go wide, saw the confusion, the horror. Inside his bag was everything she had ever preached against. Processed everything. The forbidden foods, candy bars, chips, crackers, canned ravioli. Where? She whispered, her voice trembling. Did you get this? My brother looked right at her. His voice was steady. I've been saving it, he said. For emergencies. We were trapped in that basement for 20 hours. 20 hours of eating my brother's toxic junk food, because it was the only thing that hadn't spoiled. My father, the enforcer, the man who told my brother he could poison his body at 18, was the first to break. He bit into a Snickers bar, and I watched him practically cry. I forgot, he mumbled, his voice thick. I forgot peanut butter could taste this good. My mother ate the beef jerky in total silence. Tears just ran down her face, and she didn't wipe them away. When the rescue crews finally reached us, they said we were lucky. They told us other families had run out of food completely. The organic family 3 streets over, one firefighter told Dad, had to be evacuated after just 10 hours. Nothing they had was shelf-stable. Mom just hugged my brother. She held him for what felt like forever, crying harder than I had ever seen. When she finally pulled back, she took this shaky breath that made her whole body tremble. That's when she told us the real reason. Her hands went to her stomach like she was going to be sick. Her whole body was trembling. 8 years ago, she started, and the words began spilling out, fast, like water breaking through a dam. She told us about a car accident, about the doctors, the painkillers, OxyContin at first, then stronger stuff when that stopped working. Before she knew it, she couldn't get through a day without them. She kept rubbing her arms while she talked, these quick, nervous movements. She explained that sugar, any processed sugar, made those old cravings come back so strong it terrified her. Dad jumped in right then, his hand landing on her shoulder. He told us about the day he'd found her, passed out on the bathroom floor. My brother was 4. I was 2. His voice cracked when he described calling 911 thinking she was dead. How the paramedics barely got her breathing again. All those food rules, he said, his voice thick. It was to protect her. To protect her sobriety. To keep our family from falling apart again. We just sat there. Frozen. The air, still tasting of dust and rain, was sucked out of the room. All those years. All those lunches, the ketchup packet, the rabbits, the PowerPoint, the birthday parties we missed. It wasn't about health. It wasn't about us. It was about her. I watched my brother's face. It was like watching a switch flip. In the span of 3 seconds, he went from confused to understanding to a pure, white-hot rage I had never seen before. He stood up so hard his chair crashed backward against the basement wall. So we paid for your recovery, he said. And the words didn't sound like him. They sounded jagged, like he'd been holding them back with a dam that just broke. We paid with our entire childhood. His hands were shaking, his face a weird, pale color except for 2 bright red spots on his cheeks. I sat there, frozen between them. My brain was trying to process it all. Part of me was just grateful. Grateful we survived the tornado. Grateful Mom was still alive after an overdose I never knew about. But this other burning part couldn't stop thinking about all those years. All those birthday parties we couldn't go to. All those times we were laughed at. All of it because of a secret she never told us. The rescue crews got us out that night and took us to the community shelter. The next morning, we stood in the supply line, surrounded by tables full of donated food. Pop-Tarts, instant noodles, canned soup, and boxes upon boxes of sugary cereal. It was my mother's nightmare. Her hands started shaking when she saw it all. These little tremors that got worse as other families grabbed armfuls of processed snacks. My brother moved first. He walked straight to the cereal table. He grabbed Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, and Cocoa Puffs, holding them against his chest like treasure. And he stared right at Mom. I looked at the wilted salads and then at the coolers. I picked a normal sandwich. My first real sandwich with actual lunch meat in years. Mom's mouth opened, a reflex to object. But Dad put his hand on her arm and squeezed. We all just stood there in this tense, screaming silence, a weird family drama bubble while volunteers smiled at us, having no idea they were witnessing our family's biggest standoff. Back in what was left of our living room, a tarp flapping where the window used to be, my brother ended the ceasefire. He pulled out his backpack, the one that had saved us, and turned it upside down. A cascade of wet quarters, sticky from fountain sludge, tumbled out onto the coffee table. It must have been $30. I've been stealing from fountains for 2 years, he said, his voice flat, looking straight at Mom. That's how desperate you made me. He proposed a deal. He'd stop if we could just have normal snacks sometimes. Mom's face went white when she saw the coins. She shook her head. Immediately, the clinical words came back, her shield against the chaos. We needed family therapy. This was a disease. We had to understand relapse risk. Sugar is my trigger, she said, her voice strained. I can't have it in the house. My sobriety has to come first for all our sakes. 3 days later, she proved it. While we were unloading stuff from the car, she went straight to my brother's room. I followed her. I watched from the hallway as she pulled out his hidden stashes. From behind the dresser, from inside his old soccer trophy, from the gap between his mattress and box spring, she knew exactly where a desperate kid would hide his secrets. She threw it all in a garbage bag, every candy bar and bag of chips he'd bought with those stolen quarters. My brother stood in the doorway watching her. His face was completely blank, like he'd shut down all his emotions. But I could see his fist, clenched so tight his knuckles were white. That weekend, we went to get gas. While Mom was in the car, my brother walked right up to the chip aisle. He grabbed a bag of Doritos and paid for it with his own money, standing right in front of her where she could see him through the window. She broke. She started shaking and crying, gasping for air, a full-blown panic attack right there in the car. Dad was rubbing her back, telling her to breathe. My brother just stood outside on the pavement, eating his chips one by one, staring straight ahead like he couldn't even hear her. That night, after Mom went to a recovery meeting, Dad sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The rules? He said, his voice shaking. They weren't just for her. They were for me. He told us he'd been using the food rules to control his own terror. His anxiety about her relapsing, his fear of what the neighbors would think if she did. Every time you ate sugar, he admitted, I imagined your mom drunk again. It made me panic. He said he was drowning, trying to keep everything perfect so nobody would know how broken we really were. My brother's voice was cold. Did you even care that we were miserable? Dad looked up and his face was wet with tears. Of course I cared, he cried. But I was so scared of losing everything again. The final break came on a Monday morning. The phone rang during breakfast. Mom picked it up, her voice cheerful, but it dropped immediately. It was Janice from her support group. We sat frozen at the table, knowing exactly what this was about. Janice was saying that park security had reported a kid diving into the fountain for months. They'd finally gotten a clear photo. Dad grabbed the phone from her. When they both turned to look at my brother, the fear in their eyes wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was the look of seeing him for the first time as someone they didn't know. That evening, after a silent dinner, Dad went straight to my brother's room. We all watched from the doorway. He pulled the backpack from under the bed. He unzipped it slowly, like he was defusing a bomb. But it wasn't candy this time. It was the evidence. Inside were detailed, hand-drawn maps of every fountain in town. Pages and pages of planning, all in my brother's neat handwriting, with different colored pens for different categories. There were notes on which fountains had the most coins and what times were best for collecting without getting caught. There were lists of which gas station clerks didn't check IDs and which vending machines gave the most snacks for the least money. Mom picked up one of the maps. Her finger traced the routes he'd marked, from our house to each fountain and back again. Dad found a notebook. It was a ledger, dates and amounts, tracking every penny he'd collected and what he'd spent it on. He had been doing this for almost a year, the scope of it. The planning. It left them completely speechless. They just stood there, holding all this evidence of how desperate their son had been to just eat. My brother finally broke. He started sobbing, harder than I had ever seen him cry, his whole body shaking. "I was just so hungry," he cried, the words torn out of him. "I was so hungry all the time. I was so tired of being the weird kid." He told them about watching other kids trade snacks, about sitting alone with his vegetables while everyone stared. "I felt like a prisoner in my own house," he wept. "I just wanted to be normal for once." Even Dad started crying then. He just stood there, holding a map of his son's secret life, and wept. We started therapy. We all sat in Janice's office while she drew 2 columns on a whiteboard, "Can control" and "cannot control." She made us each write in them. My brother wrote "what I eat" under "can control," but left the other column completely blank. Dad wrote "trying to help" under "can" and "making it worse" under "cannot." Mom's hand shook as she wrote "my recovery" under the first. She stood there for a long time before finally, agonizingly, writing "my kids' food choices" under the second. Janice worked out a trial system, a small snack allowance, and clear rules about where we could store things so Mom wouldn't have to see them. Our first grocery trip with the new rules was torture. Mom gripped the cart handle so tight her knuckles were bone white. As my brother and I carefully picked out granola bars, she stood in the cereal aisle doing loud, gasping breathing exercises, counting to 10 over and over. Other shoppers stared. When my brother put a box of crackers in the cart, she flinched like he'd pulled out a weapon. At the checkout, she started shaking so badly she almost ran, but instead, she pulled out her phone and called her sponsor, Anna. She put her on speakerphone right there in the line and repeated affirmations, "I can do this. Their health matters more than my fear," while the cashier pretended not to notice. We established the new house policy. The kitchen was Mom's safe zone. The garage became a weird neutral territory where a plastic bin held the normal food. It felt like living in 2 different worlds under one roof. It wasn't a straight line. Progress was messy. 2 days later, I caught my brother sneaking granola bars from the garage bin into his bedroom, breaking our new trust agreement. When I called him out, he just looked ashamed. "I can't help it," he whispered. "I feel like it's all going to be taken away again." "I need some, just in case." Then Dad came home with a half-gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream, trying to be the fun dad for once. Mom stood frozen in the doorway. Her whole body started to shake, and then she just turned and ran to their bedroom. We heard the lock click. We listened to her muffled crying through the door while the ice cream sat on the counter, melting in a sticky green pool. My brother didn't come home until after 10 that night. I found him the next afternoon at the park, sitting on the edge of the big fountain. But they'd all been drained after the tornado. He was just staring at the empty concrete basin where the coins used to be. He kicked the edge so hard I heard his toe crack and limped to the gas station. He pulled out a last handful of wet quarters, but the clerk just pointed to a new sign. "We do not accept damaged or waterlogged coins." I had to lie to our parents, using Dad's car tracking app against him, to go pick my brother up. The quiet disappointment in their faces when they saw the location history was worse than any yelling. The real change came, strangely, from a mistake. My brother, finally given freedom at school, went crazy. He ate 3 slices of pizza and 2 ice cream sandwiches at lunch. By fifth period, he threw up all over his desk. Mom had to leave work to get him. The car ride home was quiet, except for him groaning. But she didn't lecture him. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just handed him tissues and a plastic bag. And when we got home, she brought him water and plain crackers. That weekend, Dad asked my brother if he wanted to learn to make food he liked that wouldn't make him sick. They spent hours making turkey burgers from scratch. My brother actually smiled when he took the first bite. We found a new rhythm. We called them practice meals. Mom would put a single, fun-sized Snickers on the kitchen table and just stare at it, her hands shaking, her breathing loud. But she stayed. We'd each take one tiny bite and chew it for a whole minute. She made it through without running. We came up with a system. A red magnet on the fridge meant Mom was having a hard day, and we'd take our snacks to our rooms, no questions asked. 6 months after the tornado, at a neighborhood potluck, Mom brought her vegetable tray. But she watched us eat 3 helpings of mac and cheese and 2 pieces of chocolate cake, and she only did her breathing exercises twice. Dad ate 4 brownies, and she just squeezed his hand. One afternoon, my brother and I were sitting on the front porch, sharing a bag of chips, right out in the open. Mom was watching from the kitchen window. I could see her holding her coffee mug with both hands, but she didn't come out. He offered me the last chip, and we just sat there, like normal kids. That night, I saw my brother in his room. He had his old fountain diving map smoothed out on his desk. The paper was worn and water-stained. He just looked at it for a long time, all those routes and secret schedules. Then he folded it carefully along the old creases and put it in his desk drawer. He caught me watching. He just shrugged. We might need it someday. Sometimes I still check my sock drawer. There's nothing hidden there anymore. The drawer is always empty, but I check anyway. It's like a reminder of everything that changed. The scars are still there. My brother doesn't hide candy in the air vents, but I still catch him with a bag of chips in his backpack just in case. Dad still sneaks candy bars in his car. He thinks nobody knows, but we all do. And Mom still has bad days. Days where she can't even look at a cookie without her hands shaking. We're not fixed. Life's not perfect, and it probably won't ever be. But we're trying. We eat dinner together every night. Sometimes it's all vegetables, and sometimes there's pasta, and nobody runs away crying anymore. Mom goes to her meetings twice a week. We're all trying to figure it out together instead of keeping secrets in fountains and sock drawers. It makes you wonder, how do you rebuild trust when the foundation was a lie? When does protection become a prison? And how do you forgive someone for a wound they never even knew they were inflicting? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Every follow and comment is the fuel that helps me bring more powerful stories to light. And don't hesitate to share your own story in the comments below. I'm always here to listen.